about, as we know that everyone he creates is either heaven or his hell. So in the day when he leaves this life, he will start in his heaven or his hell, or there will be some yes, and barzakh, and then will be judgment. And in this time, because as we know that the time which where he will spend it in the hell, it will be kind of school then to be prepared for to.
There is no evidence whatsoever that before the day of judgment anybody would be condemned to hell or will be treated with heaven, will be permitted to enter heaven. There is no such thing. The only reference you read in the traditions of Hadhrat Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is that in the grave of everyone a window is opened. If the man is hell-bound, he is a sinful person whom Allah would not forgive, then the window from hell is open and he receives, some gusts from blazing wind from the hell. And if he is a man who is pardoned by Allah and he's decided to send him to heaven or paradise, then a window from paradise is open in his grave and he receives very pleasant gusts, wonderful winds, pleasant breezes blowing from heaven to his grave. Most of the scholars, unfortunately, have not understood the meaning of these traditions because they're inclined to take things too literally. As if the dead body in the grave is conscious all the time of these things. Now, all that we've discovered when the graves are dug, that either they're intact, there is no window open from any side, or it is the badgers who make holes, and the windows created by them. And all such windows have the same sort of filthy smell of badgers and no more. It's neither hellish nor heavenly in character. So to interpret Islam in a way that you make it a target of ridicule for the rest of the world is disloyalty to Islam. Here one should remember that the grave does not mean that small place of burial, but the grave indicates the period between the death and the resurrection. That is the period which is alam-e-barzakh. And a hell-bound person who is ultimately to be shoved into hell, he will continue to have a feeling of suffering throughout. And the person who is destined to go to heaven will have that pleasantness about him. So his time spent in that grave, which is not this little grave, but there's some sort of state intermediary between the time of death and the time of resurrection. They would have some consciousness, and that consciousness would be that of a healthy soul or that of an unhealthy soul. The example of this is the child as yet unborn. The healthy children remain happy in the uterus and they kick around and play about, and the doctors who watch them through screening, they sometimes show them, look at the boy, he's doing this and that. They enjoy their life, and those who are diseased, they immediately recognize them as distress and overmuch leaning on one side, and they feel very uneasy. So the Holy Quran has already mentioned the similarity between the after death period and resurrection, and the state of an embryo or a child developing in the uterus of the mother. The Holy Quran has two statements to make on this issue. Number one, it says that وَمَا خَلْقُكُمْ وَمَا بَعْثُكُمْ إِلَّا كَنَفْسٍ وَاحِدَةٍ. What does it mean? وَمَا خَلْقُكُمْ وَمَا بَعْثُكُمْ إِلَّا كَنَفْسٍ وَاحِدَةٍ. You know how you are born here on earth from the uterus of your mother. And this is your first khalq. Your second khalq will be similar to this. Now in the first khalq, when the egg is fertilized, the state of embryo is so, close to death that signs of life are almost non-existent there. The most important sign of life is consciousness, realization of oneself, and that is lacking. So it's a very absurd state, very ambiguous state, more death-like than life-like. But when the child is delivered at the other end, then the difference is immense, unbelievable. So the Holy Quran tells us that as you enter the period of barzakh, after your death here, and when you are raised later on, the difference between your first state and the last state would be as big as the difference between the embryonic child and the one who is delivered at the end. Then the Holy Quran points out another thing which is also very important and which is a sign of the truth of the Holy Quran as a miracle. The Holy Quran points out that why don't you contemplate on how we give different shapes to the embryo in the tombs of the mother. كيف نصوركم في الأرحام? How we keep giving you different shapes. It's not just one shape which is given. Man goes through so many shapes, and this is pointed out by the Holy Quran. Now, at the time of the revelation of the Quran, there was no surgery whereby doctors could open the tummies of the mothers and see what was happening inside. No research was carried out. It was inconceivable. Nobody knew what happened inside. But the Holy Quran is the only religious book which has pointed it out. Now the scientists have revealed that the man repeats the entire history of his evolution from the time that he is conceived to the time when he is delivered. In 9 months, 1 billion years of the history of evolution is repeated completely. He is given the shape of the first form of life, which is called bio-unit, The first bio-unit that was ever created, he looks about like that. Then he rapidly goes through different changes, as if time is squeezed into 9 months, but the time is 1 billion years. And he goes through all the different forms of life he traveled through until he was perfected into a man. So Allah reminds us, first of all, He tells us that وَلَا خَلْقُكُمْ وَلَا بَعْثُكُمْ إِلَّا كَنَفْسٍ وَاحِدَةٍ. And He says, remember how nafs wahida is created. Which means this is what is going to happen to you. You're not going to remain the same person. You will be, repeatedly drilled through so many changes that when you're born in the end at Yom Bas, you will be so different from the time of your death as if you are not recognizable. And this interpretation is further supported by another verse of the Holy Quran, وَنُنْشِئُكُمْ فِي مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. وَنُنْشِئُكُمْ وَنُنْشِئُكُمْ فِي مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. We will raise you into something of which you have no knowledge. If we are raised into this thing which we are, don't we have any knowledge of what we are? So